Morning, everybody. Let's get my slides up on the screen here. Everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
Do. Folks, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting to you about bits and pieces today. I am going to go over a bit about the on screen, what I do and the Pixmill and stuff, and then I'll talk about just tools that are used in the games industry, which may be applicable to what you folks are doing, and give some examples. It's really kind of some high level just points to point you towards some ideas, and there's time at the end for questions if you have any. I'll caveat this, I'm not the technical guy in all this, but I can definitely point you towards people maybe if you want to have a bit more of a deeper dive conversation about stuff. So it just shouldn't be any more than 15 minutes. There's plenty of time at the end for any questions folks have as well. So I'm Rory Clifford, no on screen. For folks who don't know us, we the Screen Agency for Northern Ireland. We have an economic, educational, cultural remit. Primarily, my job at Northern Ireland Screen is to run the Pixmill. The Pixmill is a co-working space we established back in 2018. Through it, we run a number of different activities around office space, both for studios and freelancers. For folks who don't know, the Pixmill is based in the Ormeau Baths in Belfast. We also provide a range of different free mentorship. This one's a wee bit out of date because we've been operating since 2018, so this is mentioning 2 years figures rather than the last kind of 4.5 years. But we have mentorship covering everything from game design, game business, publishing, legal, programming, and everything else in between. We deliver a range of workshops. We have we're co-working space first. We have a bunch of business programs as well. So we support startup video game studios as well as immersive studios, as long as they're making content and looking to release that content to like publicly available storefronts like Steam or Oculus. So we have business programs supporting studios from maybe the first prototype right through to kind of the first or second small game. We have a bunch of training schemes. We support new entrant talent into the industry through schemes like the Pixmill Training Program, but also Restart, which now we rebranded as Cine. And also we work in partnership with the likes of Future Screens, Digital Catapult, and Unity. So yeah, we're in a lovely Ormeau Baths. If you happen to be in town at any point, feel free to drop me a message. Someone check the space out. Like I say, it's something working in kind of the wider interactive industry. So anything from video games to immersive, so VR and AR, and anything else that kind of falls outside the traditional buckets of film, TV, and animation. In terms of the games industry in Northern Ireland, just a bit of context, it's growing. This is just a sample of some of the studios that work in the industry, the video games industry and the wider interactive sector. I said at the moment we only have about 20 to 25 studios working in interactive across video games, VR, AR, and services as well. Recently, we've had a number of releases, the likes of the PO Beyond from Value Studios just last week. We had the Surviving the Abyss, which was a city survival management game from Rocket Flare. But yeah, all these studios here have released titles in the last kind of 2 years. The big studio is Hypixel in the bottom left-hand corner as you're looking at it. They're based up in Derry, and they make a game called Highfield. But the games industry and the wider interactive immersive industry as a whole is really growing. And one of the kind of the reasons why that has been possible is we're there to support in terms of like our funding for prototypes, but also the accessibility of tools to make content has never been better. I'm going to talk through a few examples. Some you may know of, some you may not, but it's kind of give you an idea of like some of the types of software available out there, but also some of the projects that I know locally in Northern Ireland are being made with game engine technology. And like I say, everything I mentioned here, I think GameMaker now has a free version. I'm not quite sure, double check that, but that's definitely the kind of other bits and pieces I mentioned later on. These are all tools widely available, free to download, free to jump into. I have like a load of like supporting material around to learn how to use these tools. But starting with GameMaker Studio, we have a number of studios that use this. It's mainly focused on 2D. It's C#, a lot of visual programming. Don't necessarily need a super in-depth background in programming or C#, but it's a really good kind of platform if you're really interested in 2D visuals. A really interesting tool to use when you're coming down to kind of 2D narrative games. This is becoming more prominent in the industry. Many folks will probably use the 3D engines like the Unity and Unreal, but GameMaker, especially with the launch of GameMaker Studio 2, is becoming more and more prevalent. And like, if you're into 2D pixel art, it's the place to be. It's a place that a lot of people kind of gravitate towards the first time. So again, the benefits of that there, if you work mainly in a 2D kind of medium, you want to use it as a tool to kind of tell stories, something that you can jump into and get your hands on. It's a really cool. Maybe we'll get more of the more well-known tools that are used in the industry. We're probably all aware of Unity. The more widely used game engine within the games industry, and again, a incredibly powerful tool. But it's not just being used in video games. We're finding a wide range of industries are delving into, and we'll go talk through some examples just locally of what people are doing with it. Starting with video games, like this is a game that's literally been released a month ago from Rocket Fair, Surviving the Abyss. Incredibly complicated city management simulation game, like lots of moving parts, lots of economies to manage, and it's a really excellent game. But the great thing about Unity is that you can develop these complicated games with systems and that interact and affect each other all the time, and most of the time, 90% of the time, it all works smoothly. But again, it kind of shows the power of game engines, that you go from this type of like more economy-based game, but also moving into something that's a bit more physics-driven. This is Inertial Drift. This is again the games I mentioned. Sorry, this is they are all made locally in Northern Ireland. This is Inertial Drift from Level 91. The Sunset Prologue, the demo is available in Steam for free to play, but it's an excellent example of like where Unity's physics and being able to manipulate physics within Unity to kind of experiment. This game is very much based off drifting, and drifting your car around corners, and the studio done a fantastic job in terms of balancing with the visuals, but also like how the player interaction feels when you're trying to drift the car around the corner. So again, it's a powerful tool when it comes to likes of physics and simulation and stuff like that there. If you're more from a narrative background, this is a handy wee tool called Ink. So if you find yourself you're more, you want to tell interactive stories or write interactive stories, but you're not coming from a tradition, and you have no kind of C# background, this plugin, which is widely, there's a free version of it through Unity plugin store called Ink, and it's effectively, if you wanted to write a film script or interactive story and just type it straight into the game engine, this is how you do it. This is becoming a really useful tool for folks who are more narrative focused, who want to tell more interactive stories, more kind of stories that have more decision trees, and it's becoming more prevalent. And it's been used recently. This is a game called The Pale Beyond that got released a week and a half ago, and the whole game it's based in Unity, but it's heavily reliant on that system in terms of being able to implement decisions and narrative, and it's a fantastic kind of example of how Ink can be used. There's over, I think they got to 60,000 lines of words and narrative within the game, but they're able to use Ink to kind of allow folks to have that kind of more decision tree driven non-linear experience, but also within it, it's laid on top of a survival mechanic, a management mechanic as well, and it's again incredibly complicated. But yeah, so that's the kind of traditional kind of ideas that people have about video games, or like game engines, is that it's primarily in video games, but we're starting to see companies use Unity as a tool to base their own, as a basis to build their own tools around. You may be aware of a company called Retinize. You may have had them come speak to yourselves, but Automotive, it started life within Unity. It was built through Unity, and it's a way to kind of, they've built it as a tool for fast turnaround animation, where people use VR headsets to embody characters and to quickly kind of use it as a low-cost motion capture tool. Again, probably not when people were making Unity and the additional idea of having a game engine, not probably the endpoint they thought they would have, the end product coming out of Unity, but again, shows the kind of flexibility that you can make something that is consumer focused, but more of a pro tool that's becoming that's quite a lot. It gives a lot of freedom to the user, but isn't not necessarily a video game. Another example, Clean Sheet. This is a really exciting project or company, Immersive. You may have had them speaking as well, but like the Kathy and Adrian, using Unity to kind of as the basis for Clean Sheet which was initially to train up professional goalkeepers. So using VR headsets and using the ability for it to track eye movement and gait, as well as kind of position to kind of train professional goalkeepers, and they can recreate any shots down to the millimeter and track in detail where goalkeepers are struggling. But again, as a tool for training, it's incredibly powerful. And like, what's kind of funny about this one is that it wasn't actually targeted at the professional industry, but they stuck a video up on TikTok, and a bunch of 16-year-olds were really interested in seeing it as a public version, so they released a public version as well, and it's becoming it's quite a popular game if you're ever on the Meta App Lab. But again, shows the kind of flexibility of Unity as a tool, in terms of you can have video games, you can have narrative tools, you can have consumer or like industry tools with automotive, and then something that's very much around professional sports. And I know they have other products which they're building around Unity as well. So the flexibility that Unity gives is really useful. Unreal, the other kind of engine of choice, and people debate what's better, Unreal or Unity, but this really depends on what you're trying to achieve. And like, we have studios that flip between the two engines. Some are very much delve into one or the other, but they do have their benefits and some strengths and stuff as well. Like Unreal is probably a bit more well known for its kind of visual scripting with the blueprint system. Unity does have its own kind of visual scripting system, but maybe not as robust as Unreal. So Unreal might be an easier kind of place for folks to kind of jump into straight away and make something. But Unity is quickly catching up with the kind of similar tool as well. But the power of like Unreal is that its ability to create realistic environments. So you may have seen like the examples of the nanite system. There's a quite popular video on YouTube around Unreal. Again, this is all game engine generated, can run in real time. It's super detailed, and it's a fantastic kind of example of like the power of some of the tools and plugins attached to Unreal. Like the nanite system, something like this 10 years ago was to run in real time would be kind of impossible, but now it runs on a relatively strong PC, which is excellent to see. And it's really good. That's where Unreal kind of stretches itself compared to Unity, the ability to create realistic environments or even realistic characters, like the metahuman, in terms of trying to, if you're making an immersive kind of experience, you want to bring a lot of realism and characters in it. The metahuman's a really kind of excellent kind of tool to start off with, and really kind of a great place to kind of work from. We have a lot of studios that use metahumans as a kind of a basis and go from there. Again, incredibly powerful tool. This attached to Unreal. Again, all are free or close to free if you want to delve into that there. And again, the obvious kind of use case for, or like not the obvious, but the most publicized use case for Unreal is the fact that it's been moved into virtual production, or sorry, LED screens. And now we're starting to see Unity move in that space more and more as well. But Unreal obviously has the kind of as more of the incumbent in that space, with likes of the Mandalorian. But again, a flexible tool again for the likes of film storytelling. And that's what's great about the game engines. I know I'm very focused on the creative industries here, but I've seen game engine technology used in construction, used in uh, in medical training, and it's becoming a tool which folks can really get the benefits from it straight away. But yeah, lots to do with game engines, but like other bits and pieces that can make you aware of. But problem like tools are which are used within the game engine quite a lot. Sorry, the games industry or interactive industry. Some of you may be aware of, and some of you may not. But like again, these are tools which are are great from a point of view, like if you like as a way to kind of get projects spun up quickly or get kind of MVPs put together quickly. Some of these are really excellent, likes of Adobe XD, a great tool for kind of interactive prototyping. You can use Figma, but a lot of our studios will use Adobe XD. They kind of put together kind of low cost, easy put together kind of interactive prototypes or interactive visuals of their games. The likes of holograms. We have a couple of studios use it for volumetric capture. It's actually kind of tool the way it works. Again, it's a low cost way to kind of achieve kind of photorealistic-ish capture of live performances and real people. Likes of mix and roll. Sim tool if you're trying to quickly put together a rigged character. So like within the games in the pipeline for game, especially characters in games requires not just the design but also like the rigging with the bones and the animation. And mix and roll again is a great place to get a jump on that and kind of get your characters rigged up and something that you can manipulate afterwards. And then Blender as well, which is an excellent Blender. You'd almost suggest is getting up there alongside Unity and Unreal as a tool which can be used to create a range of different things within it. We have a lot of our studios use it just for asset generation and modeling, but also it's becoming more and more prevalent within the animation industry as a tool for like 3D animation. That's just some of the tools within the games industry that are used quite widely. Like I say, people think of game engines, they just assume it's just for video games, but we definitely see a lot more companies come towards us across the creative industries and screen industries, engaging with game engine technology as a way to kind of put their stories across. But they're starting to bleed into other industries as highlighted before, and offers lots of kind of, I don't know, if you don't have the time to build your proprietary technology from scratch as a way to go in and kind of test and prototype your potential idea, it's a really good space to start in. I'm conscious I've just blabbered on there, folks. So does anyone have any questions or queries about what I've said there, or anything they want to mention or raise?
Marguerite is on the call. Barry, you go ahead and then I'll read out Marguerite. You can unmute yourself, I think, Barry.
Thank you. Rory, at my company, we're currently looking at VR and headsets, particularly because I understand there's a new headset out, which is quite, advanced. So I'd invite some comments from you in terms of how developed it is now. Are we anywhere close to the point in which we can realistically see VR and headsets having a major impact in how we do learning and development, for example? In particular, I'm conscious that quite a few people still say they feel nauseous using headsets. Do you see a time in which we'll overcome that issue, or is that still a long way off?
I think it's slowly but surely growing. Like, I think I saw an article the other day saying Meta's, Facebook's, like the Quest headsets, and quote this and probably be wrong, I think the two has a close to 10 to 15 million like headset unit sales globally. No, it's not exactly mass market like game engine technology, like a video game console, like an Xbox. The older generation was sold 90 million units, but like I worked in the games industry, like in the immersive industry, funny enough, with Retinize about 5-6 years ago, but it was just after the peak of the initial hype around VR, when it was the old Samsung phones, which you had to slide into this plastic headset, and it was the form factor was incredibly awkward. So what's happened, and I think with headsets, especially standalone headsets, has come on leaps and bounds. I think with, like, in terms of nausea, it affects some people, not others. And I think for some people, I know headsets is just not for them. But we are starting to see, I know, VR headsets become more prominent. I know VR projects which have sold well on the storefronts. So, like, I don't think it's as much as an issue as before. And it's something like, it's really just managing people's expectations and onboarding. Like, sometimes you'll have a group of folks, and like I remember doing this before when you have events, and it's just making people aware. Like, people put on a headset and they're fine. If people but if they put the headset and it's a case of they feel nauseous, it's okay. Like, some people will grin and bear it and go through the whole experience and have that nauseous feeling the whole way through. So sometimes it's really about the user experience, not just in the headset, but also in terms of like getting people prepped to go into the headset, their experience during it, and like kind of after they come out of the experience. So sometimes it's just managing that around it. But even if when the VR industry kind of grows and headset sales increase, there is still always going to be a small percentage that will be affected by headsets, and I don't think I can ever guarantee that will ever go away. But I do feel that the vast majority of folks, I think I demoed a fair few folks when I was at Retinize, and like, it was a relatively small. It wasn't something that surprises that came up, but it was always few and far between. So it's okay to be cautious with it, but I wouldn't write off VR just because a small percentage. Now, if you feel like you deal with a certain group of folks that may feel more affected by it, then it may be a case of working with them to better understand what is it that is the actual experience, is the type of experiences in the headset, is it the comfort of the headset on their when they wear it. Like, there could be a multitude of just different factors that are affecting people there. I hope that's answered your question there, Barry.
Yeah, thank you, Rory. Just one other point quickly, if I may, and that is, are you aware of just how long it's feasible to wear a headset for even people that don't feel nauseous?
Like,
you know, is it kind of like 15 minutes and then a
yeah,
10-minute break?
Yeah, like the most we've ever seen anyone sit in a VR headset experience is maybe a tops 30 minutes. And that's something we had, like, an immersive narrative experience. So like 10 to 15 minutes at a time, and taking folks out, like, again, prolonged headsets, even stick someone in a headset for a couple of hours, then it'd be the same as like staying in front of your screen for too long, like get up and take a break. But yeah, like 10 to 15 minutes for a session makes sense. Like, I wouldn't run an experience more than 30 minutes at the moment, because the cost of doing that, like, just unless you're working in video games, like, that can be making an interactive video game experience, that'd be slightly different. But yeah, 10 to 15 minutes makes sense. But like most folks, a 30-minute session time is about feasible. Now, you do have the crowd that will play longer, maybe play for a couple of hours, but that usually is the gaming crowd, and they're just getting engrossed and they're getting stuck into it. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Barry, I don't know if you were on we did a webinar, it was a while back, and I recorded it, but David Trainer from Central presented at that, and he might be somebody as well you could ask those questions to, because he does develop virtual reality for training, but be a lot of, for the construction industry or hazardous situations or whatever. So that might be a good.
That would be really useful. That's David Trainer from Central, did you say?
Central, yeah, he's based in Belfast, but I can introduce you to him.
That would be lovely if you could. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave works a lot. Dave with Centurial, and they have a product called Immersive. I'm making a lot of assumptions, Barry, with your name saying Legal Island, but they're doing a lot of work over in Scotland with the courts in terms of getting people comfortable going into like the court environment,
Okay.
the legal environment, and
Yeah.
do a lot of like for like pre-trial in terms of people going in to make sure they understand like
Yeah.
where they're going and what's going on. That's something that they've helped roll out across Scotland.
Yeah.
Dave's probably the best person to talk about that.
Yeah.
Thank you. What troubles me here is that if there is going to be a percentage of staff that are always going to feel nauseous, even though it's a fairly small number, when it comes to L&D and training, the big word at the moment is inclusivity. And if you immediately say, well, if you can't do this form of training, too bad. You can't. You have to provide an alternative way of doing that training. So if you're going to offer VR, but with the full knowledge that you're going to have to offer, if you like, conventional training as well for those that can't step up to VR, it's going to be expensive and it's going to be time consuming.
What I appreciate, but what I would suggest there then is the case of before you run out and commit to like buying 50 headsets or something, experiment with 1 or 2 headsets and get people comfortable. Like, you make a lot, like, there is the worry about nauseousness. I appreciate that, but sometimes it could be a case that people don't know until they try and people just assume they'll be nauseous. So I would say, like, we've had that in the past with previous when I worked in the industry, clients and stuff, and like the case was just make a small experimental commitment to it and see if it works, roll it out on a small scale before you maybe scale up to a larger L&D program. But again, I think what Gillian suggested, David and his work around with Immersive, really useful. And I think VR can be there's the initial having the experience in a VR headset, but that can be the content that can also be exported as a video or something that can be on YouTube.
I was reading an FT article last weekend, and it was interesting because their Insert magazine was all about future technology, and so there's quite a few articles on VR.
Yeah.
And one of the articles mentioned that there are a number of companies, big companies, that have purchased, like thousands of headsets to send to their hybrid or home workers, and it's a very good way for them to do either inductions or even small team building exercises, so they all feel together whilst being at home. So I'd very much like to reach out to those big companies and get their first experience of doing this, because if it's working for them, that that's telling me something very clear and strong.